Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I'm Little Miss Popularity again. I have yet another guest. This is Micah Cummins. Say hi to
Hello.
everybody, Micah. This is another in our ongoing installment of the Micah Dialogues, and we don't have any idea what we're going to talk about.
Nope.
been I've been joking with Micah that we should talk about just a long list of explosive, cancelable subjects. and
It's a
and
game. It's a game to see how quickly we could both get canceled.
But although we don't have to talk about cancelable subjects, it does open a question, which is uh, how do you learn about those subjects? What are your ways of learning, of informing yourself about the news of the day or complicated subjects of the day?
It's a good question.
Regardless of where you come down on, Ukraine or Israel or anything like that, where do you learn
Right.
it?
So I've made an active decision to stop directly reading the news daily because I was finding it was detrimental to my mental health. It was not. It went from being informative to being just sort of an onslaught of all of the awful, horrible things that are going on that I can't control, that no one's asking me about, that for that I don't necessarily need to know all about. So really, now a lot of times it'll come through conversation. So I work with people who actively digest the news through social media or through YouTube or whatever different forms they use. So I'll hear things in conversation.
But you
And
haven't
then
been tempted to go back and
I
maybe.
I do. So usually what I do is if I hear something that seems to be inaccurate or doesn't seem to be the full picture of a current issue, I'll go and I'll do my own research to inform myself um, of what's going on. And I'll do sweeps occasionally. And honestly, I get a lot of things from here on BookTube or from watching people having conversations. I do listen to podcasts that deal with current affairs. I find those a little bit different because it's a discussion format rather than
Yeah.
just sort of this onslaught of attention grabbing headlines. So I'll listen to a podcast talking about the news of the last week, for instance, or something like that. So where I'm getting educated, insightful interpretations of current events and not just being slapped in the face with these attention grabbing headlines that honestly aren't telling the full truth anyway.
And when you do that, when you do a sweep like that, do you have an instinct to take a side?
It depends on the issue. It depends on if I feel I have enough of my own personal knowledge around that topic to take a side. A lot of things are so large and beyond my intellect that I don't know where I should fall or where I do fall. So it just depends on how close I am to the subject. So
And when you do a sweep like that,
stateside things that I experience or that I know of firsthand or have more knowledge behind, I will take a side on those issues. When it comes to global issues, especially if I'm not directly related to it or affected by it, I don't usually feel that initial gut response of where I land.
and when you do a sweep like that, do you need reading time to recover, or do you go
Oh,
to?
definitely
You have a social life too, don't you?
social lives.
I don't understand
No,
why
it's
people
it's
have
it's
them.
very true. So I will, you know, for me particularly, I like to say, okay, today is a day I want to open the can of worms and see what's going on in the world. And so I have to put myself in a headspace of almost detachment from what I am reading. I want to go objectively see what's going on. I don't want to get emotionally involved because I know it's not going to be helpful for my mental state if I'm getting super involved in all the stuff I can't control. But I want to be educated, so I'll go and I'll look. And obviously, every time I look, it's always bad. It's never good. Never will be good. I keep hoping one day it'll be good. But yeah, then after that, I need a detox period. I need to go read something light, or I need to completely unplug from all technology. That's something I'm finding myself doing more and more of.
Oh,
Is
really?
instead of saying, "Oh, I'm just going to go watch something else, something light and fluffy," I'm going to go read something else. It's instead I'm finding myself putting my phone away, turning the podcast off, turning the audiobook off, and just completely being in whatever moment I'm in, and sort of just letting my brain have this sort of resting period, and then I'll go in and go back to normal and let my brain continue on.
Every once in a while, the internet can provide a little bit of it's not all bad.
No, certainly
On
not.
Twitter, you can pick fights with strangers. I love doing it.
I've never tried that. I've never tried
And
picking a
on
fight with a
Instagram,
stranger.
you can occasionally see video of factory rescued cows experiencing freedom for the first time,
I was not
or
aware of that.
a video
See,
clip of laboratory.
I'm not. I don't participate in social media outside of YouTube, so I'm robbed of seeing a freed cow experience nature for the first time.
It's kind of incredible. Laboratory monkeys, laboratory beagles, feeling
Oh
atmosphere
wow!
for the first time, seeing the sunlight for the first time.
Wow.
That can be kind of amazing. That can
I
really.
I'll have to. I'm sure they have that here on YouTube. I'll have to search for that when I need when I need to pick me up. Go see a beagle seeing the sun for the first time.
So, what about reading? What have you been reading lately? Is it more time with your other girlfriend?
Queen Victoria. Yes. So I'm trying to see where my stack is. I have been switched back to Kindle reading as of late. The last 3 or 4 books that I've read have been back on my Kindle, which is kind of a change for me. I've been reading almost completely physical copies.
And the Kindle is a paperwhite?
Yes, it's my paperwhite, and I was reminded about how fantastic reading on the paperwhite is. Yeah, so
is that the newer paperwhite? It looks bigger.
This is, yeah. I'll take this case off because it makes it look strange. This is I think it's 2021.
So that's bigger than that.
It's 6.8 inches.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of just 6. And it's nice, but it is nice having a larger screen on here. But I'm very excited to try out the basic Kindle. I still need to order that. I'm waiting for Black Friday because I can get it for $70 instead of $90. So I'm going to wait and get it then. But having that slightly smaller form factor, because I can't carry this around in my pocket.
No.
But my older Kindle that I have that's 6 inches, I can slide it in my front pocket of my jeans or whatever and take it with me.
And the basic Kindle it's absolutely easy to do.
I am very excited to have that because I don't take this to work with me. I have an older Kindle that I take to work with me. Because I've tried reading just with the Kindle app on my iPhone, and it works fine. I have a fairly large, my phone's fairly large. Not as big as they are now because this is about 5 years old. But I don't like the LED screen, and then I also don't like that I have access to literally everything else on there. I'm like, I'm reading, but I could go do something else right now. I could go in an email or Voxer Steve instead of reading.
Always advised.
Or when I have this, I can just do whatever. So for reading, I am currently reading The Sleepwalkers by Christopher Clark. I can show it here, see if I can see. My Kindle doesn't show me the covers anymore. It just shows me the text in this really ugly outlined.
Boy, that happened to my paperwhite as well. It just stopped doing that for a while. It's back to doing it, but is yours up to date?
Also doing it right now. It has to, okay, there we go. It's back. So how the West, or how Europe went to war in 1914, and I'm enjoying this one. And then as far as some novels I read,
of Franz Ferdinand, for which I blamed you in a live stream.
Yeah,
and everybody thought, yeah, it seems like he's a likely.
It seems like I would be the one. I'm the one. And then sort of I'm trying to do World War I stuff in November. I think there is a group read for that here on BookTube. I'm not participating in that. It's just Anne Novella wanted to buddy read a World War I book with me. And so I've started reading other World War I things. And I had never read All Quiet on the Western Front until this week or last week. And I read it for the first time.
Now, when it comes to World War I, are you more inclined to nonfiction?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
To nonfiction. And the reason being, I have read so few books on the subject. And so when approaching it, when I approach a new subject, I want to start with nonfiction first. I don't want to start with historical fiction of a period that I'm not comfortable with, just because I don't want to be misled. And I also don't want to sort of get any of the fiction elements confused in my mind with the true, with the truth of that event. And particularly for World War One, I have read a lot about sort of Europe leading up to World War One, particularly Eastern Europe, a lot to do with the Russian Revolution, obviously, sort of leading up into the early years of the First World War. And lately, I've been reading a lot about the Balkans, and some of the Balkan wars taking place leading up into World War One. But as far as the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo directly into the full culmination of World War One, I have read very little about. So it's been a good month for me wrapping my head around some pretty big stuff that I haven't contemplated before.
I presume you're enjoying The Sleepwalkers? I really liked it.
I am. I'm taking my time with it. I have been reading it for a little over a week, and I'm not yet quite halfway through. And that's completely intentional. I've been reading it alongside lots of other things, just because it's dense. It's at least for me, approaching the subject for the first time. It's very dense, and so I'm wanting to fully process everything that's going on. And particularly for me, I'm finding the years leading up to World War One and a lot of the sort of the initial factors. It seems far and away much more complex than any conflict that I've read about so far.
Yeah, and bittersweet for me.
So many aspects of what's taking place.
I convinced my Deb to be an ambulance driver on the front lines, and they didn't get her. So it's a bittersweet conflict for me. She came back just fine.
Man,
I tried again in World War II. They didn't get her then either.
trying to get rid of Deb. Deb, go forward. Go to the front.
I told her the war was over. Just go and make it.
The war's over. It's fine. Go.
French countryside is lovely. I've been reading those.
She just comes back.
Those
you didn't even get it in World War II.
I get those subscriber things. You give your email and you get the day's deal on ebooks.
Oh, yep.
I just get the free ones. I don't buy anything, but I get all the free ones. I send all the free ones to my Kindle. Nice. And the last few that I've read, I felt overcharged. I felt they were not good. And I always wonder about that. I always wonder what, there's a whole ecosystem of authors out there that the books, the last 3 that I read that were free were not good, but they were some author's dream, probably the result of years of work.
Not good in the actual mechanics of the writing or in the information.
You name it.
Or all of it.
But they weren't good at all.
Wow. Were these nonfiction?
They were all novels.
Oh, all novels. Okay.
So maybe that's the problem. It's just that those email notifications, those deal notifications, they're weak for nonfiction. Very much so. They're not great if you want to pay $1 or $2 for an ebook.
Does that just have to do with the fact that nonfiction is just less popular across the reading spectrum?
Could be. Could very well be. But most of the nonfiction is, I scroll down straight to that part, and it's always, how to use your crock pot or something like that. Very seldom is it anything else. I found
nothing of substance or anything.
I found one by a historian I really liked, that a book I'd never read before. So that was fantastic.
Good.
But I might have to go back to real books tonight. I read a real book last night.
Okay.
That wasn't good. So I'm not on a good run myself. I should read The Sleepwalkers.
Maybe.
Or, when we were at the Book Barn, or no, there's a gigantic book by Hugh Strachan called 2 Arms about the lead up to World War One. Maybe I should just read that instead of messing around with self-published Amazon stuff.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious to know, you mentioned, you've got the new Paperwhite and you've got a case for it, and you've got an older Kindle that you use because it's more portable.
Yeah.
If that's true, why would you be compelled? Why would you feel like waiting to Black Friday and buying another Kindle?
I want to try it because, first of all, I'm gadget hungry for e-readers. I like just messing around with them. But also, I would love to. I want to see how it holds up to the Kindle that I have when it comes to the hardware. I know the software is the same, the hardware, just because it's for a fraction of the price. And I would love to then make a sort of a comparison video for my channel about maybe why you're good to just get this $70 Kindle today instead of buying this $180 Kindle that's not that much better.
You know what kills it for me for the Paperwhites or the Kindle Basic? You know what kills it for me? It's such a little thing.
I think I know what it's going to be.
It's the power button.
It's
It
being
sits
on
right
the bottom
in your hand.
where your pinky
Absolutely
goes
impossible to avoid
as you're
turning.
holding it. Yeah,
Whereas with the Kindle Oasis, that's not the case.
no.
Not the case at all.
And is it Kobo's that put the power button on the back,
Up
like
on the
top
rear back. Yeah, there's no way.
That's how. Did you ever experience reading on the Kindle Voyage? It was from 2014, I think. I got one back when it first came out, and it has the power button on the top right corner, and it's I don't know why they did away with that because it's fantastic.
Does yours still work?
Not really. The battery life is so poor on it that it just goes super quickly. I wish it did still work, because it's a 6-inch form factor, and it doesn't have physical turn page buttons, but it has pressure sensitive little like strips on the side of the screen that you've
Never
seen
heard anybody not praise them. Everybody praised it.
It was a great design. It gave you a little haptic feedback so you knew you had pressed it, but it wasn't a physical button where you're going to brush against it and accidentally turn the page or something. I thought it was a great device, and then they discontinued it literally a year after releasing it.
It wouldn't be a problem with these things if this had a gyroscope. If you could rotate the text,
right,
while reading it, then
right, yeah, just have this little top thing, you know. That's, I mean, the Kindle Oasis has that. I think that has to be the only Kindle that has the gyroscope, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think probably
I love being able to just
because it has the bezel. So, you know,
right.
I guess they didn't want to be mean to left-handed people. I don't know
Which
why.
I appreciate.
That's one of my favorite things to do is be mean to left-handed people.
Hey, we're people too. We're weirder, but we're still people.
I mean, and then you hit the jackpot with a left-handed introvert. Good Lord.
It's true.
I'm
a left-handed introvert posing as an extrovert to the real world. It's exhausting.
So, what would determine whether it's the new Kindle Basic or your Paperwhite or not? You mentioned in our last conversation that you're being more intentional with your reading, and that's making slower reading, fewer books polished off in a month.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if I was going to ask you what your next book is, but I guess I also want to know about the process. Does that greater intentionality mean that you spend more time really trying to decide what you want to read next? No whims?
It does. I think it does. So right now I'm trying to focus on reading the books that I already have. I'm not participating in the Read What You Own challenge in any official capacity. I haven't made any videos about it, but just sort of seeing everyone talking about it, it made me realize, like, oh yeah, I may have in the past gone down the road of book buying and not book reading, and that's not a place I want to be. So right now, when I'm ready for a new book, I go and I have a shelf of unread books. So that's usually where I start, is does anything here grab my immediate attention? And if so, I'll go with that. It will also fall into whatever topic I'm reading. So if I'm reading a book and the topic is really interesting to me and I don't really have my fill at the end of that book, then that's a pretty clear indication of what I'm going to be reading next. It'll at least narrow it down. So after doesn't necessarily narrow it down, because I could say I finished Sleepwalkers, so now I'm going to go find another World War I nonfiction to read. Well, there's thousands of titles that fall under that description, and so it doesn't necessarily narrow it down at all. But I do find myself being more picky. I've also found myself being a little bit more, I don't want to say judgmental, but critical when I start into a book of, is this worth me taking more time or not?
Right. Well, no,
so
fairly
I don't want to just tear into books and DNF them immediately and put them back on my shelf pretending like I've read them, because I don't want to do that. But it's more like, if I want to spend more time with this book, is it worth me spending that extra time with it, or is this one that I can sort of go into autopilot and just read a little bit more quickly?
sounds like you're saying you don't want to be Jack Edwards. I thought everybody wanted to be Jack Edwards. No?
No, no. I want to actually be able to say things about my books.
Hmm.
I
Ah,
wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind the money that he makes from his channel.
uh, so when you're reading about World War One, are you settling on that subject because of your other girlfriend? Are you shaking your head the whole time, saying if she'd been alive, she would never have allowed this? It would never have happened. I knew a historian once who said, when we were talking about the incredible complex web of reasons why World War One happened, he firmly maintained it was because Queen Victoria died. And so
Well,
no one was
when you
over.
look at the heads of state of the main countries involved, they're descendants of Queen Victoria. It's a family squabble to some extent. It really feels that way to me. Of you, you just have cousins sort of butting heads, and then it unleashes itself into this fire of World War One. I would probably agree with that. I obviously I don't have the same knowledge that your friend would have had on that, but I would agree with that statement.
What about World War One adjacent? Would you ever be tempted to read Seven Pillars of Wisdom by Lawrence of Arabia?
Oh yes, yes, I would be.
And with a book like that, would you just temperamentally yourself, would you want to read up on the subject first before you settled in with the book? He's not trying to write a narrative history.
Yes, I would. Just for context. I mean that's one reason why like I read All Quiet on the Western Front, but before that I read some other nonfiction leading up to it because I knew it was a novel. But I do enjoy historical fiction, but I'm always wary of it as well going into it. I don't really like to go into historical fiction without having digested a little bit of just the nonfiction first, to be able to sort of be able to pick out, oh, these are the elements that have been added to the story. Because if I go in blind, I'm not going to know what was added and what's fact, or what was sort of what was blown out of proportion, or what was shrunk down a little bit more to fit the author's narrative. Which because I never want to be sort of led astray and then come out having presumptions that end up being false about it.
Are you ever tempted by Wolf Hall?
Yes, I I I actually started Wolf Hall, and I put it aside because I felt that I didn't have enough grounding in the historical context of the novel.
Hmm.
And I thought, I'm not doing this novel justice. I need to go and I need to make myself more ready to fully appreciate what's being presented here. Because that's definitely a one again an example of a time period that I'm not fully versed in.
Although it's kind of odd that you could get through school without reading All Quiet on the Western Front. That's kind of odd.
Well, it's right. I had it. I A lot of my school reading got shifted around a little bit, and I was never quite up to my grades reading requirement, so I wasn't really reading all the things for the grades that I was in. I wasn't comfortable with reading until I was about 12 or 13 years old. So I was reading lots of rudimentary reading materials all of those years because I had zero comprehension. I could read something out loud and not be able to tell you what I had read really. Um,
Zero comprehension. So we're back to Jack Edwards. Hmm.
well, maybe he just needs some one-on-one tutoring and then it'll be fine. It took me. That's all I needed. Some hard work and you know. So yeah, that's really the reason for that, and that's why a lot of the times when I'm going back and catching up on these older classics now is because I'm trying to fill in those gaps that I missed when I was just sort of trying to learn
Yeah,
this
you would have.
all
So
reading.
staple
It was a
things like
struggle for me. It was pretty severe dyslexia.
The Call of the Wild or The Red Badge of Courage.
I have read those. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I've gone back, and for some reason, this was one that I had. It's sort of where you get it into your mind, where you're so familiar with the novel, or it's referred to so much that you sort of mentally have it checked off on your list.
Hmm.
So I had sort of done that with this one, and then I was talking with Ann on Voxer, and we were just talking about back and forth about World War One novels and nonfiction. She had made a video on her channel about World War One novels, and it was like, oh yes, All Quiet on the Western Front, World War One novel, and then I was like, oh my goodness, I actually haven't read it. I only know of it
Yes,
I need to go read it.
there's a category of books where that's true.
So then I went and I got the digital copy from my library, and I sat down and read it in one sitting and checked it off on my actual list, and it was fantastic. But it definitely does. It definitely happens for me quite a bit with classics, at least.
I bet a lot of people think they've read Kafka's Metamorphoses, or
I know I did until I actually sat down and read it.
or
Realized, nope, never read it.
Or Catch 22.
Yep.
But a lot of people who think they've read those things when they actually haven't done that. It's kind of...
I feel it has to, especially on BookTube, when you are surrounded by so many references to classic works of literature, or so many people who have read it talking about it, and if they present it in a appealing enough way multiple times of you sort of digesting that, I know it happens for me where you're like, oh yes, I've read that. And it's no, I've heard lots of people talking about it. Or like for your channel, you have so many great series where you do your read-alongs.
Yeah.
Where you are discussing in depth the aspect of every chapter of a book. And so I know, like for me, I went and before I read Moby Dick, which I read last year, you had done several read-alongs on your channel throughout the years where you in depth go into each chapter, and I had watched every single one of those videos, so I was fairly convinced that I had read Moby Dick. And then it was, no, I've only heard Steve's interpretation. I need to go actually read the book.
I slacked off in 2023. I slacked off on doing that, and I love it. So I really,
you're giving time for everyone to get caught up on the books they actually haven't read but think they have because of you.
I should do that regularly. Just take people through classic works of literature. I love doing it.
It's fantastic. I really enjoy that format, particularly having that resource available while reading the book itself, especially if it's something that is maybe a little bit more dense, maybe a little bit it's older, especially with a lot of the classics. Like for I think you did a read along of Ovid's Metamorphosis, or no? You have just videos about it.
I have videos about it, yeah.
Videos about it. Like that's one for me that like I'll watch those as I read, because it's it's a society I don't know anything about. It's a culture I don't really know anything about. So I'll need a little bit of help getting through.
But speaking of BookTube, how's the BookTube side of Micah's life?
It's back into a good
times of life on your channel.
Yes, it's good. I'm actually after we talk here, I'm about to film a reading update for my channel. It won't be long, but I have decided that a short video is better than no video. And
well, also
you've been able to keep it every week so far, which has been good.
You mentioned in an earlier video when you were talking about slowing down and being more intentional with your reading, you mentioned a thing that is a gigantic fear for lots of new booktubers or people who haven't started a channel yet and are thinking about it. You mentioned just directly that it means when you do a reading update, a lot of the stuff will be the same.
Yeah.
But you've received only warm embraces for that approach, right? No one said,
I have.
Why make a video if you don't have new stuff to talk about?
Right. So I'm like, well, if they want to hear me talk about the same thing, I'll keep talking. I can make up words.
I always want to stress that to people who are worried about that, is that we tune in for the people, not for
right.
breakneck pace.
Right. And I mean, personally, for me, it doesn't bother me. Sometimes if I'm following the channel and every reading update that's being filmed is 5 new books that are being read or that have been read, and all these books currently going on, I just get in sort of this overwhelm of just sort of all of these titles being thrown at me, and sometimes I just want to hear just a little bit about the one book you're reading.
Yeah, there's nothing.
So in that way, simplicity might be good.
Fast readers are so annoying.
They are. They're the worst. But yes, Signs of Life have returned again to the channel. It feels good. I need to I have a fairly large stack of comments I need to go get responded to as well, because that's something that I always forget when you get back into sort of a routine filming schedule and posting schedule. You have this whole other side of wanting to answer your comments really well, and everyone's always so gracious on my channel and leaves really very thoughtful, well-constructed comments. So I want to go spend time and reading those and answering them appropriately.
I have the Spaminator.
He has not migrated to my channel.
Every once in a while, he will to other people.
I don't believe I've ever received a comment from the Spaminator, ever. I don't know if he knows I exist. I'm a little offended that he hasn't come over to me yet.
It always cracks up my old bookish friends who don't understand BookTube. They don't understand why I do BookTube. When I mention that I have my own supervillain, it just cracks up.
You really do. He's present in every live stream. He's in every comments field of every video, sometimes multiple times.
So there are signs of life on your BookTube channel, meaning that you have figured out a way to work it in moderation, more intentionality, that sort of thing. You're one step away from being a minimalist.
I really am. Maybe that'll be my next channel, a minimalism channel.
What would the only thing left would be the cardigan.
I get rid of this.
All the rest
and I got to get rid of the words. You can't have words on your shirt if you're a minimalist. And I'll have to throw all these away. But I have my plant, so I'm good with that. I need to simplify.
And your plant doesn't multiply gnats?
No.
No.
For some reason, I think it's because it's basically dead.
I have gnats.
It does not. Unlike my channel, there are very few signs of life coming from that plant.
What is it basically dead? You don't take care of it?
Well, no, I have a brown thumb for whatever reason when it comes to plants. It's a snake plant. I bought it because the person at the plant store told me that it is impossible to kill it and you only need to water it every 2 weeks. And so I said, great, I got it. I only watered it like every 2 weeks, and I think it needs more. I think it needs more than what I'm giving.
I found that when plant people,
I've moved it in front of the window. It used to be in a dark recess of my room. So I moved it in front of the window and I water it every morning.
The plant people who say that this is unkillable, you hardly need to take care of it at all, that's never true. No. I don't know why they tell such things.
I came out of that store with 6 plants and I have 1 of them that remains. The rest are empty pots somewhere.
But so BookTube is possible to do.
Yes, and
you were worried at one point that it was taking too much bandwidth.
Right. The revelation actually came from one of your most recent videos, where you were talking about it only when you do it in the way that you and I do it, and a lot of other people do it, which is you set up a laptop or a phone or an iPad, you hit record, and you talk until you're done talking, and then you upload the video to YouTube, maybe add a title, and that's it. That it only takes as much time as it takes to say the things you want to say, and then maybe 5 extra minutes to get it uploaded and get a good title put in there. And when I realized that, when that clicked for me, I had still been sort of working in this infrastructure of, if I want to film a video, I need to carve out hours in my afternoon to get it all prepared and to get it set up and to talk about it. And then I realized, no, if I want to make a 5-minute video, we're looking at about 10 minutes total of filming the video, uploading it. Even the most busy person in the world can carve out 10 minutes in a day to sit down and say something about the book they're reading. And so when I changed that perspective for myself, I realized, like I'm making this a way bigger, more complicated production than it is. So it takes me about 30 minutes because I like to do a video about 10 or 15 minutes long. And then I do like to go and type in the titles and the description and add some information in there and maybe get a good title in there or something. But but that's 30 minutes. That's more than doable. And so when I was able to shift that perspective, it made it feel a lot less constraining and a lot more free to sort of fit it into my not completely crazy schedule.
So the shocking news here is that Micah was overthinking something.
Yes.
Who would have thunk it? How amazing!
Who would have thought? I never overthink anything ever. I am the most zen person you'll ever meet. There she is.
We had
it came down to simple overthinking, and I would say that to anyone who has that same fear or who has struggled or is struggling with the time commitment, time management aspect of BookTube. It only takes as long as you want it to take, especially if you go with this bare bones presentation style that I like to do on my channel of literally just using a phone. I have the only lights I use are the lights I already use anyway, and I don't do any editing. I just hit record and upload the raw footage. And obviously, if you want to have a bigger production or a little bit more professional looking video, it will take a little longer with editing and all of the setup and all that kind of thing. But if you don't go that way, it's really not that much extra effort.
Fortunately, I don't need to put in extra work to be brilliant because I'm brilliant already.
It's true. See, you don't have to like come up with things to say.
No,
I have,
no.
I have to fake brilliance. For you, it's just intrinsic.
Well, it also helps that once you reach a certain age, you don't have to come up with things to say because you're just going to repeat things you've already said endlessly.
You're like, well, I guess I'll just make the same video again for today. It seemed to work well.
So that, before we run out of time here, so that is on the agenda. You finish up the latest installment of the Micah dialogues, and then you make a video.
Yes.
And then what? You've got the
weekend. Then I'm actually going to spend most of the rest of the afternoon reading an advanced reader copy that I was sent in the mail. I was approached by a publisher asking me to read a new work of historical fiction, and if I enjoy it, to make a video on my channel. I actually think I sent you that.
Yeah,
I sent you about that.
I don't remember though. Is it a 2024 book?
It is. It is. So I have plenty of time. But yeah, I sent you the email to make sure it was legit and it wasn't getting scammed, because they wanted my address. Obviously, I'm not just going to give that out to anybody.
The surest way you know is if they're not demanding anything. That's the one thing I hate about those overtures when they're made to booktubers, is people saying, I'll give you a book in exchange for a review.
And this was the first time that I had received an email that did not demand something of me. I have received 5 or 6 over the course of my channel so far of saying, could I send you my book for you to read and review and make a video about, and this sort of laundry list of the things they wanted from me. And I never did that because I don't need more things to do. I have plenty to do. But when someone's saying, can I send you my book for you to read, and if you enjoy it, maybe do what you want with it? Absolutely. That's a fantastic offer, and I'll jump on that anytime.
Well, I want to wrap this up before, so we don't get cut off in mid-sentence.
Get a professional goodbye.
Yes, a professional goodbye.
Yes.
Wonderful. We'll do this
Thank you, BookTube.
before the end of the year.
Let's do it.
Excellent.
We'll make it work.
All right. All right.
Bye, BookTube.